Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us today for Behind the Main Stage, Building a Career in Live Music Festival Production. I'm Steph. I am the Executive Director at the Music Media Collective. And joining me for the introductions will be Sophia from the Junior Advisory Board team. Just a little bit of background on the Junior Advisory Board. So in addition to the Music Media Collective's board and our advisory board, we have a junior advisory board that's made up of students, recent grads, and self-made early professionals in the music industry. They are charged with leading programming like this webinar that you're seeing today, and they do 2 of these a year. They also guide us, all of us on the board and the advisory board, of what's happening and what's going on with the younger generation and the next generation of leaders who are coming up in this industry. Before we get started, I want to say really quickly that this session is being recorded, and that there will be time for a Q&A at the end of this session. And there's going to be a portal where you can input your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. Now I'm going to hand it over to Sophia.
Thank you, Steph. We're really excited to host the first Junior Advisory Board webinar and to have everyone here today, so thank you. Today's conversation is focused on what happens behind the scenes at large festivals, from brand activations and crowd logistics to production and all the things most people will never see when attending as a fan. So we're going to start with a quick speaker introduction and then a fun icebreaker of 2 truths and a lie, and then we'll move into the panel discussion. And so don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A section throughout the event, and we'll get to them at the end. So now I'm going to move it over to Brady Lawrence from the Junior Advisory Board and Taylor Eshe from the MMC Board and Cash or Trade, and they will take us into the intros.
Thanks, Sophia. We are lucky to have 3 speakers with us today who bring together different sides of the festival world. So first up, we have Kira McCabe, Senior Production Manager at C3 Presents. Kira, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your background and what you do at C3?
Yeah, hey. So I oversee all of the stage production at a number of our festivals, mainly Lollapalooza, Sueños, Bonnaroo, and Austin City Limits, amongst a couple other small ones. And I started with C3 in 2019, but I've been freelancing slash contracting in the festival and event industry since 2011, and specifically in production since around 2014. So done a lot of shows over the years.
And we also have Joe Lucchese, Executive Vice President at Groundswell Experiential. Joe, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background within the festival world?
Yeah, great to meet everyone. Thanks for having us. So I'm the Executive Vice President, and essentially I'm a lead relationship architect where I go out into the world and try to find different opportunities for our organization that specialize in building festivals or IP events, sponsoring different large entertainment properties. And then the other side of our business is true to form experiential. I've been in this business of festivals, touring, and experiential since I was in high school. I got my start by going to UNLV, and then I started to tour with different bands, brands, and DJs. And I was just counting, I think by the age of 30, I did like 5 world tours. That's why I look like I'm 75 years old, but I'm really not that old. Good to meet everyone.
All right, and last but definitely not least, we have John Wagner, General Manager of Guardian Barrel Services. So John, take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hi there. Yep, thanks for having me. John Wagner with Guardian Barrier Services. We're part of a collective called Concert Stuff Group. We're incorporated of 13 different businesses, all kind of similar, all in the entertainment industry, anywhere from trucking, busing, to stages, to flooring, to production as well. But my part that I take care of is Guardian. We do all of the crowd control and a lot of the infrastructures based around large festivals, tours, and events like that. I think last year we did over 100 festivals and about 60 tours. So we stay quite busy in the festival world for sure. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. To loosen things up a little bit, we're going to do a quick festival edition of Two Truths and a Lie. Each speaker is going to share 3 different things from their experience in the festival world. And we want all of you to try and guess which statement is a lie by voting in the poll you see on the side of the screen. At the end of this, we're going to reveal your votes, the lies, after the panel discussion. So, Joe, we can start with you if you want to give your 2 truths and a lie.
Yes, I'm not sure. Are they going to be put on the screen? There we go. Okay. So I was once asked to create 2,000 LED jackets in 2 months. I produced a professional wrestling event and ended up in the ring as a wrestler. And I drank beers with Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Okay, next we'll do Kira.
Hey, my longest hotel stay for a gig was 30 days. I turned down the job of event manager for Billy McFarland long before Fire Festival ever existed. And I helped build the world's largest interactive arcade game.
Okay, and we'll move on to John.
Okay, great. Ghostface Killer of the Wu-Tang Clan angrily threw a microphone at me while making fun of my monitor mixing skills. I once received a personal handwritten thank you note from Beyonce, thanking my company for what we did on her Renaissance tour. And Joe Biden's dog, Major, bit me while the Secret Service just sat there and watched me.
These are great. Again, we will reveal everyone's votes at the end of the panel discussion. Leading the panel are Junior Advisory Board members Sophia and Brady.
All right, thanks, Taylor. To start us off, I'd love to hear from each of you about your skills. We'll start with Kira. What skill got you hired, and what skills have kept you working in the festival space?
Yeah. I mean, a little bit of personality and the willingness to kind of jump in wherever I was needed. I've definitely done a lot of jobs on a festival site before I ever got into production. And I think that, kind of just being willing to do whatever was needed to get the job done and make the show happen. It's, one team, one dream in that aspect. And then I'd say, attention to detail and the ability to stay organized are huge in this industry, especially when you're working on multiple events at a time and really having to keep track of all of the tiny details.
Thank you. John, same question. What skills have gotten you hired, and what skills kept you working in the festival space?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kira hit it nail on the head, but the tenacity to keep going through and executing. We all know that things will happen. Things will not necessarily go to plan, but it is the willingness to keep going through it and breaking past that barrier of being uncomfortable and just plowing through there and staying task oriented and to see the job completed till the end. I think that's one thing that definitely kept me employed over the years, and that's also what I look for whenever I hire new team members and want to collaborate with people.
For sure, yeah. And Joe, do you have anything else to add to this?
I do. I think intentionally putting yourself in places where you could find that opportunity. For me, it was college. I was able to really learn a lot in college about the specific thing because they had a specific type of curriculum. But meeting people, asking people for help. If you're young and you're trying to get into business, just putting yourself in the right opportunities goes such a far way. And I could get as Granley was saying, look at where some of these producers and promoters are. Where do they have offices? Can you apply for an internship? Can you call and just get I used to pretend to write papers on people so that I could get in front of decision makers. So I'd be like, hey, I'm gonna write a paper on you. Can I meet with you? And then I would just continue that way. What kept me employed and have the career, I think, is networking and being a very good person and being true to your word. In any industry, there's a lot of nonsense, but I think in our industry in particular, the word goes very far. And continuing that and just being diligent with being a good person, I think, has kept me successful at what my dreams are for this industry.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about planning and problem solving. John, when it comes to crowd flow and movement, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make, and how can those decisions impact the fan experience or safety on site?
Yeah, thank you for that. So we don't necessarily, Guardian, we don't do crowd planning necessarily, but we do take care of we implement whatever plans are set in place with production, with the security teams and whatnot. But the biggest thing with this, I would say, is making sure that you give yourself enough time to really think through your scenarios and think through and make sure you have a plan for every scenario out there, whether it be a high wind action plan or different type of evacuation plans, and making sure that or even like your VIP experience, how your VIPs get in and exit as well. All those kind of go into the overall plan of crowd control or crowd safety. And if you kind of leave one of those little elements out of there, it definitely affects the overall flow for sure. So you have to have all those different elements kind of in place. So you have to have all your teams working together on the same plan, and just allowing enough time to really to talk through that. VIPs ideas versus back of house, they could be totally different experiences. So bringing everybody to the table and having an open conversation about how the workflow and how the crowd flow should look is definitely leaving enough time for that is very crucial. I would say that's the main thing to do in this whenever you're planning.
Thanks.
All right, Kira, we're going to talk about show advancing and live production so everyone can kind of learn more about what that process entails. Can you walk us through what advancing a show looks like from the first point of contact to show day and where things most often go wrong or might go wrong in that situation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so there's kind of two levels of advancing on a festival side of things. We kick it off with the headliner advance, and then kind of much later down the road, we really get to the rest of the bands. But my first contact with a headlining artist typically starts around 3 months before the show. Occasionally, it might even be before the booking process is finished if we're trying to figure out, can we even accommodate this artist at this festival with the level of production that they're trying to bring. So, I mean, I started talking to John Summit's team in November about Lollapalooza because they wanted to get ahead of whether or not what they were designing could even fit on the stage that we have. So, on a lot of those occasions, headliners actually reaching out to me before I'm really ready to start that advanced conversation. But like I said, the rest of the bands, we kind of start advancing about 7 weeks out from the show once we know what the headliners are doing. But before we even begin the artist advance process, we're having to determine, our stage specs. What do we want to offer as a festival? So what's the size of the stage? Are we providing enough stage LED wall? Everything that goes into building kind of the base layer. And then we're gathering all of that information. We're locking in our vendors. We're solidifying those specs. And then really I kick things off with an email to the headliners production managers saying, hey, here's the stage manager on your stage. Here's our lighting designer. You're going to be working very closely with them to figure out how we accommodate your show within, our festival constraints. And we're sharing our stage specs and kind of spelling out all the important information that they need to know. And then typically they're coming back with a massive arena touring design and saying, this is what we're bringing, figure it out. And there's really, that's kind of when the advance gets into the nitty gritty, and we're having back and forth conversations. We're connecting the important departments. So lighting from the tour is talking to lighting at the festival. Audio from the tour is talking to audio at the festival, and we're working just through all of those details of how we really bring the show that they want to deliver to life in our festival setting. So it's definitely a group effort. Our lighting designer is the one that's working through, what can we actually hang of their lighting rig? What can we accommodate in the roof? The stage manager is the one working through, spatially, what can we actually accommodate? Because not only are we going to have to load this band in, but we're also going to have to push them off stage and store all of their stuff while we have the 5 bands that play before the headliner. So can we, store all these risers and props that they're bringing in? So really just working through, all those little details. I'd say where things start to go wrong is in poor communication. Communication in this industry is hugely important, and really where things start to fall apart is when we're not getting, any communication, or very kind of sporadic, not no real clear picture, of what's going on. I've had an artist tell me that they're coming to site with 7 semis, and they've shown up with 10 semis worth of gear that they want to unload. And that's a big difference in the festival world, 3 semis worth of production. So, show day is kind of where we get to see whether or not these acts really communicated their needs well, and if we're actually prepared for everything, or if, they're showing up with an inflatable tiger you never knew about, or you're calling John Wagner 2 days before a show, begging him to pull a 40-foot long 3-tiered riser out of thin air. So, but yeah, I'd say that's kind of the biggest breakdown is communication.
No, for sure. Yeah, thank you for going into that. I really appreciate that.
Thinking about how brand activations and sponsorships are such a huge part of festivals now and how they can really shape the fan experience. Joe, what are brands actually looking for before deciding to invest in a festival?
Yeah, that's a great question. It usually starts with the priority in the market. Let's say it's an alcohol brand, for example, right? If it's an alcohol brand, what is the priority market that they're looking at, or markets, and like what are their objectives? Are their objectives to sell product? Are their objectives to sample? We often call it liquid to lips. Are there objectives for, awareness, all sorts of that stuff. And then based on that, their agency or their team will identify different events that fit whatever occasion they're trying to encourage or be a part of. And there's multiple tiers to that. Some brands will look at it and say, all right, we want to have pop-up events and festival activations, and we want to do influencer events. Speaking specifically about the festival events, if all those boxes are checked off, all right, great market, we could sample and sell, so our KPIs will be achieved. Then it's typically a matter of what is the financing of that and what does that look like? And that's when someone like myself comes into play, where we will then negotiate those deals with those brands or those agencies to hopefully deliver something that is positive ROI for their experience.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, John, we're gonna get back to you. So you've kind of alluded to this already in the conversation, but you manage large crowds and a lot of different people, teams. What's like one of the hardest parts about managing people at that scale that's people probably don't always think about?
Yeah, I mean, managing large events like these festivals, or just in general,
Mm.
you have call it, I don't know, Lollapalooza, 2,000 employees. I don't know, a lot, but anyway, you need to make sure you are definitely queuing in with your department heads, daily communications, and really empowering those teams to make intelligent decisions on behalf of the team. You can't be in 2,000 places at the same time, so you need to really train and empower your teams to handle business. And I think that's you also, by empowering them, it helps them to feel really a part of the process, and that really keeps the retention of the employees kind of solidified. I believe so.
Nice. Yeah, embracing the chaos with that.
All right, so we know festival production is constantly evolving and changing over time. Kira, what are some of the biggest changes you're seeing right now when it comes to technology and production regarding festival production?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say kind of one of the biggest changes, not necessarily technology related, but is really just in every act that you're seeing, whether they're the first act of the day or the headlining act, is really wanting to deliver, their show, their look. They want to come in with their full touring. Um, touring package, and festivals didn't used to be that way. It was, show up with your back line, play the stage, and get off. We're throwing a music festival here. So I think in a lot of ways we've become extremely accommodating and trying to, make everybody's dreams come true. But it's definitely a lot more challenging when you're trying to shove an arena show into a festival setting. So that part's tough. I mean, on the technology side of things, I think one really cool thing that we've done lately is like solar powered. We basically deployed an entire solar field for Lollapalooza to power the main stage the last couple of years, and that was a really cool kind of advancement in technology that took up a lot of space, and it was a lot to get there. But it's cool to see changes like that happening for sure.
Yeah, it's very cool to hear. Thank you for that insight.
I just want to remind everybody really quickly, we have an area for questions. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists or even for the collective in general, please put your questions and we'll get to them after we reveal the two truths and a lie, which you guys are voting, which is great. So that's fun. We have about 10, 13 minutes left on the voting. So keep those coming in, and please feel free to ask any questions that we'll get to at the end. All right, Sophia, take it away.
Oh, good. This is very insightful. Joe, so you've worked with different brands using their IP to create activations that really connect with their fans. What separates a great brand activation from one that's just not connecting with people?
Yeah, great question. Short answer is intentional, like being intentional. The activation has to have intention. And then from there, we typically look at, does it provide shade? Does it provide cooling? Or like what tangible benefit can it provide to the consumer that's at the festival? And then also for the festival itself. So like a great example would be some brands will do large activation builds that have programming available or stages available for programming. And that's often a really fun thing for the festival because it adds to the festival experience for the attendee. And for the attendee, it gives them another chance to see an artist. Oftentimes, those activations have headline artists that are doing a pop-up set. And then within that, there is shading, there is cooling, and there's those little consumer creature comforts. That's what we see to be very successful. On the other side is like, what type of unique experience does it bring to the consumer? Like it could be simple as, oh, there's a viewing deck that if I'm a member of this certain brand or this certain club, I could get a better viewing experience. Or, hey, there may be, plus up glam stations that make my life at the festival a little bit easier, or food vouchers, whatever it may be. Those are good tactics, but those seem to be like the rooted ones that have success. And then from there, you could get creative. Once you check those boxes off, you could get really creative. And then that depends on what the brand is ultimately trying to accomplish or what they are. So again, it starts with intention.
Nice. Thank you.
All right, so before we move into the audience questions, let's hear from each of you about how people can break into the festival world if they don't already have connections, and what's the best way to network. Kira, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I mean, I always say volunteering is a great route if you truly don't know anyone. It's definitely not the most glamorous. You're working a volunteer position, but it's a way to at least get your foot in the door, meet a bunch of different people, start talking to people that work the shows, and kind of get an idea of what within a festival interests you, because there's a ton of different possibilities there, and a ton of different departments and positions. But I mean, I had a volunteer once at Halloween who was great. She showed up the next day when it wasn't her shift and was like, "Hey, I'd rather be here in the office learning and working with you guys. Is it cool if I hang out for the day?" And I hired her to be my office manager the next year. And then she took over for me when I left to go to C3 as production coordinator. So you never know. It's definitely one way to do it. I took a bunch of internships and kind of went that route as well. It's never fun to work for free, but I think if you're willing to, put yourself out there and really, connect with people is the biggest thing. I think our industry, is hugely based on relationships in a lot of ways, but you can form those relationships. It doesn't mean you have to have them going into it. It's just about, being open and willing to put yourself out there and help where you're needed. So from a networking standpoint, I mean, I know that there's social media, pages and groups now, and there's, ways to kind of do that. But I always default back to the, good old conversations with people is really the best way to get ahead and make those connections. And you never know who's going to call.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. John, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, Kira definitely hit a lot of great ones on the head there. Some of my best employees that I have, they've come to me just saying, "Hey, do you need an extra help, an extra hand?" Things like that go a long way to see somebody just kind of like you said, volunteering and kind of showing up, and willing to put the work in. And even though it can be a very challenging show, and with no expectation of payment or whatnot, a lot of those people tend to really stick around, or leave right away. That happens too. But overall, like those are the ones that you say, oh wow, that they really take the initiative to put themselves out there and want to lend a hand, and the willingness to learn new things. If you're if you're on a tour, somebody that might be a carpenter, taking an interest after they're done with their work, take interest in lighting. That goes a long way for the entire tour or the production team. Like, oh, that guy, he stayed to help load the trucks after his shift was done. So things like that go quite a long way, in finding new work, and retaining work, and being the nice guy. Nice guys really do kind of pay off. I mean, trust me, there's a bunch of us crusty old roadies out there that are all grumpy, but being the nice guy, actually it does pay off, dividends for sure.
Yeah. And Joe, you want to take it away?
Well, I think my partners John and Kara said it really well. I will add another dimension to it, and that is, I think, just going for it and really driving initiative. Everything that I've wanted to do, like the touring, the festival work, it just came from not really allowing myself to say no and just trying to get that experience. And then another thing is have a lot of different experiences within it. Let's say you make that introduction and you get your shot. I encourage everyone that can take lots of different roles and see what really fits. You may be surprised. You may love doing something that you never thought, and that's important because it also makes you a better leader in the future. If you understand what it takes to unload a truck in the rain, you're not going to be too quick to say, pack the truck and do it the wrong way. You'll have a little bit more empathy for your colleagues and your workers. And that, in my opinion, makes a really good leader. And that starts now. Get a lot of experience.
Oh, yeah, thank you guys for the great insight.
All right. So continue to put your questions in the Q&A. We'll get to those in a minute. But before we do, we're going to reveal the results from the two truths and a lie and see how everybody did. So go ahead, Steph.
Okay, so we are getting the results, the poll results from our two truths and a lie, which is super exciting. So we're going to get to that. Let's see. Rich, are they showing up so that everybody can see them? Okay, great.
Double check, everybody should.
Okay, yeah, can you guys see, can everybody see the poll results? Let's see. So for our speakers, this is how it will work. We're going to have you guys one by one. I'll call you out, and you can tell us which one was your lie, and then we'll have you tell us a background story, a little bit of a background story on both of the truths, because in reality, these are all kind of wild stories, right? So we wanted to give everyone on this webinar an idea that anything and everything can happen in the live production and live music space. And so we want them to reveal their lives, but then also be able to give a little bit of background of some of the things that actually did happen. So we are going to start with you again, Kira, if you want to reveal your lie.
Yeah. Well, a lot of you guessed it, but my lie is that my longest hotel stay for a gig was 30 days. It was actually 47. Welcome to live events. You live in a lot of hotels, and sometimes you live in one hotel for a very long time.
And that was in Chicago, right?
No, that was
No.
actually
Oh.
in Boston in January and February. Lovely time to be in
Oh,
Boston for Big Air Fenway. So we were also
Oh.
building outdoors in January and February. It was a lovely gig. Um, and then yeah, my two truths. So I did turn down the job of event manager for Billy McFarland. This was back when he was running his credit card company, Magnesis. And I was a fresh college graduate, had interned at a couple festivals. And I sat down for an hour interview with him. And I walked out of there thinking, this guy might be a little unhinged. And I think this is too good to be true because none of this is really making sense given like the amount of experience I actually have at this point. And so I turned that down. My mom was like, "You're crazy. That's a ton of money." And it was probably the best decision that I could have made fresh out of college. And then I did help build the world's largest interactive arcade game. That was for E3 a few years back. It was right outside the Staples Center. And that was actually part of a brand activation for Tostitos. And or actually it was Doritos. And the base of that arcade game was a stage where we had performances, and the top of it was an LED screen that you could actually play from life-size controls that were on the VIP deck. So it was a fun build.
so you really dodged a bullet with the Billy McFarland thing. Clearly, that was a good gut decision. And that speaks to a lot of like sometimes you just got to trust your gut. You're in a situation and it doesn't feel right. Sometimes, like money isn't always the best thing. But as we talked about on this webinar, is like being with the right team members is super important. I have to know, how did you get even hooked up with having the interview with him, with Billy?
My friend was working for his credit card company doing customer service for Magnesis. And she was like, "Oh, you do events. We're trying to hire. Let me put you in touch with my boss." And I think about a month after that interview, she called me and was like, "I haven't gotten my last paycheck. You were definitely right to say no to this." So, yeah, he's never been great at business. But yeah, no, I will agree with you there, Stephanie. I typically tend to say, say yes to any opportunity that comes your way because it's a great way to discover what you do and don't want to do, and it's a great way to meet people. But it's just as important to know when to say no and walk away from something that doesn't seem like a good fit. So.
Yeah, totally. Great advice. 100%. And not getting your last paycheck. I think, unfortunately, a few of us here, speakers wise, have been in that situation. So, again, anything and everything can happen in this space. There's a lot of things that can go awry. So, thank you, Kira. That was great. Let's see. We're going to move on to Joe. Reveal your lie.
My lie is I produced a professional wrestling event and ended up in the ring as a wrestler. That is a lie. Although that would be a dream come true. It's definitely a lie. Yeah.
Somehow
Um,
I could see that happening, you never know. Some of the
no,
talent doesn't show up. You got to play all the roles, right?
got to do it. Yeah. So, all right, quick story on the 2000 LED jackets. Way back when we produced, there was this massive activation called Bud Light Whatever USA. And we took over a town in Crested Butte, Colorado. And we flew in 2,000 contestant winners that were all a part of this giant contest all summer. And then that Labor Day weekend of that year, we flew them all out to Crested Butte. And if you don't know anything about Crested Butte, it's gorgeous. It's in Colorado. It's way up in the mountains. Everyone gets fatigued from all the altitude sickness. And we basically had a festival from Friday through Sunday that we had all these different things, all these different crazy programming aspects. And on Friday night, the opening night, the gag was we're having this DJ named Alesso perform. They were going to shoot a commercial, and they wanted all these jackets to go turn white at the same time during the same cue with the artist on stage. So we had 2 months to figure out how to make LED jackets all on the same frequency. I'm not even going to tell you what went into it. People literally almost died trying to figure this out, but we did it. It was fantastic. And there's a lot more details that go into it, such as what do you do with all these 2,000 people's coats that needed to wear this new LED jacket? So it was quite an amazing experience within an experience. And then drinking beers with Jay-Z and Beyonce. So this was crazy. We were doing Made in America Festival in Philadelphia. Shout out to Steph and Rich. I think there's some Philly connects to you guys. And we were doing the VVIP lounge in addition to this big activation for Budweiser. And it was probably like close to the end of the show. I was just in this VVIP lounge by myself, hanging out, drinking a Budweiser. And then I see these two figures walk towards me in the dark. And I'm like, what's going on? Who are these people? And it was Jay-Z and Beyonce. They just sat down next to me. We were hanging out, gave them a beer. Jay-Z didn't want to drink one. I think Beyonce had one. And we were just hanging out. And it was the most random thing in the world.
Things like this happen, right? Sometimes you randomly just meet crazy celebrities and stars, and those are things that can happen when you're working in a festival, and sometimes they don't happen at all. So, not to say that those things happen all the time, but really cool stories. And I think if you work in this industry long enough, you will have your own stories like this to tell one day. And Joe, this is taking someone's vision and creating the impossible possible, right? That's a lot of what we do in this industry is say, nothing's a bad idea. Let's actually really think of something wild and then break it down to see what actually could be built in reality. And a lot of times, the things you couldn't think you could build do actually come to fruition. So that's a really rewarding part of being in this job, I would say, too.
Agree.
So thank you so much. All right, Wagner, let's hear your lie.
Yeah, so my lie, Beyonce did not give me a handwritten note, but Taylor Swift did. We did her Red tour, and for Christmas she handed out handwritten Christmas cards to all the vendors, thanking them with our touring crew that was on the tour. Said, "Hey, thanks for having Dan out there. It was great seeing him, and he very much is a part of a valued asset to the tour." And I thought that was pretty. Hate on her if you want, but it's kind of hard to. She's legit. So that was the lie. I did, however, get bit by the president's dog. Yeah, so COVID really sucked for everybody, pretty much on this panel here. I would assume. So, a Guardian, we do a lot of infrastructure elements and stuff. So, we were commissioned by the Secret Service before Joe Biden became president to have little things on his property whenever he'd come and go. So, we were constantly on his property doing different things for the Secret Service. And they would always warn us, "Hey, the dog's out. Just be careful." And apparently, I wasn't careful enough one day, and the major bit me. And yeah, the guys were just laughing at me. I'm like, "Really, really, dude?" So like, yeah, we got bit 3 times the other day. So, but that was a week before it made national news that somebody else at the White House got bit as well. So, I was first in the game. So yeah. But then yeah, Ghostface Killer. Yeah, back in my days of being a sound guy, he didn't like my monitor mixing skills, so he threw a microphone at me, and I was running monitors, so I was below him, kind of back, running monitors, and it hits me on the shoulder, and he's up on stage, and I'm like, I flex like this to him. I'm like, oh shoot, I just flexed to Ghostface Killer because he threw a microphone at me, and I'm like, that wasn't the smartest thing in the world. But at the end of the show, the tour manager said, "Hey, sorry about that. Thanks for blah blah blah." He invited me back to a party that they were having actually at the Lancaster Arts Hotel, and I passed that up. I probably should not have passed up hanging out with the Wu-Tang Clan, but I don't know. It didn't feel right.
But you kept your cool in the moment. So, there's a wild story, but also something very important with being a professional in this industry. Maybe you had a little reflex gesture, but you played it cool enough, you stayed in the zone, you did what you had to do, and then you have the manager asking you to come and hang with them, which is the result that you would want, instead of escalating a situation, which a lot of us are putting fires out consistently. That's actually a huge part of the job, putting out fires, being the one to calm people's nerves, talk people off of a ledge, encourage that everything's going to work out. And 9 times out of 10, they really do. And you've got to be able to keep your cool under pressure. John, I remember that story. Was that at the Chameleon Club in Lancaster, PA?
Absolutely. That's a small little, maybe 500 cap room where all the bands on the way up or on the way down stopped out at the Chameleon Club. Unfortunately, it's not there any longer, but it was in our old stomping grounds. Love that place.
Yeah, yeah, great club. Thanks, John. And this was really fun. So, thanks to all of you for participating. I hope you guys who are watching also had fun too. Learned something through the two truths and a lie process. Okay, so we have at least one question, but we can keep the questions going. If you have a question, plug them into the Q&A portal down there in Zoom, and we will get to your question. I'm going to pass it off to the Junior Advisory Board team member, Belle, to take questions.
Thank you. And thank you folks so much for being here and spending an hour with us so we can learn about what you guys do. We're going to jump right into it. So we have this first question from Annalise, and that is, what is one thing you know now that you wish you would have known before entering this industry? And whoever feels moved to speak can take it away.
I'll start that. I think one thing is realizing that the people you meet on the way up, you also meet on the way down. So you really have no idea who you connect with early on. They're going to rise up with you, and you want to make sure that all your relationships, you treat everybody with respect and kindness. You will meet them again, whether you want to or not. You will meet all of them again, and your first experience, whether positive or negative, you need to try to keep them positive, because it'll come back, and you will have those relationships pop up again. And your quote unquote enemy could be your best buddy or your best connect down the road. So definitely be cognizant of your relationships, and try to the golden rule. There you go.
Great. I could go next. I think what's been surprising to me is the amount of interesting industries, talents, and crafts and people that we get to work with. When I started years ago in high school, like I didn't know I was going to be able to work with fabricators that could make amazing art installations. I didn't know that I was going to be able to work with people that could figure out everything from like Wi-Fi to how a generator works and how intelligent you have to be to understand that stuff. I never thought that I would meet all sorts of various folks that were stagehands that are amazing people and good friends that I still know to this day and have grown, just as John was saying. So that, don't discount that. We're very fortunate and blessed to work with so many different creative types and just industries. It's pretty unique. So I didn't know that, and I'm glad I do now.
So just to kind of tack on to that a little bit, I wish I had been more aware of just how many different opportunities existed, because I think that sometimes we get very narrowly focused on, okay, there's just production or there's just artist relations. And that's not true. If you're passionate about, the planet and sustainability, there are positions at festivals that exist for that. I think that there's definitely stuff that a lot of people don't always consider, but we're building, small cities for a period of time. So there's really a lot more that goes into it than I think a lot of people realize, and the opportunities there are, I think, a lot more than I knew about for sure when I first started.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for answering that. We have another one that just came through. When looking for new opportunities, is it best to rely on networking or past experience and skills?
I think it has to be a little bit of both. Like if you don't have any experience, you got to network hard and meet people and be diligent. And then I think if you do have a little bit of experience, you could build rapport with that experience by talking about those experiences or even the desire to get more of it.
Yeah, I think they definitely go hand in hand there.
Yeah, I would
Cool.
take any opportunity that is available, whether networking, whether it's working events. And after every event you do, just network on that event, saying, "Hey, what's the next one? What else can I do?" Like, definitely networking on top of networking is definitely key whenever you're first starting out, for sure. It will pay off in dividends. It may not seem like it, but it will in the long run, for sure.
Yeah.
Incredible.
You brought up a good thing, if I could jump in there, John, about networking on networking. So when I was on tour, I used to invite who I think would be potential clients or future, opportunities, brand managers, production people, whoever. I would invite them to my shows on tour and spend time with them and show them around, like show them an experience that you can't get anywhere else, which is like backstage and like what really happens. And that was the foundation that built my network and my career, decades later.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We have another one. This is from Veronica Grace. What advice would you give to someone who is working at a huge music festival for the first time?
Drink lots of water, wear sunscreen, comfy shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Make sure
Solid
you
life
have make sure
advice.
you have yeah, make sure you have high vis, or else Kira will kick you off site.
Yeah. I think it's the same as what we've just been saying, like be open, meet people, network, like leverage that experience to its fullest. If you're for the first time working, let's say in one department, maybe make friends or contacts in another department if that interests you.
Awesome. All right, we have another one. This is from Jennifer. Did you ever picture yourself in the position that you're in today? If not, what was your dream job as a kid? That's a fun question. I like that
Yeah,
one.
I wanted to be a rock star. I mean, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I got in this, I wanted to be a rock star. That didn't pan out. So I'm a barricade guy now, which I don't know how that translates, but that goes back to, like, there are so many different avenues in the industry that you can take this. I didn't know barricade was even a thing. Like, that wasn't even on my radar. But I'm now, we're probably the number one or number two company in the world in what we do, and we're in some very important conversations with production teams and on festivals and management, and so yeah, that is that. There's a lot more opportunities out there than just your typical narrowly focused jobs out there.
I thought I was going to be a ballerina.
Yeah.
Steph,
My intent.
weren't you trying to be a ballerina too?
I did actually. Kira, we could sidebar about that at some point. I was putting
There,
my body through a lot of torture until I was about 21. So,
We can definitely sidebar about that.
yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted to go on tour, like originally, and before that I thought I was going to be an entertainment director at a casino, and then when I realized what that meant, I was like, no way. But then when I went on tour, I was like, this is amazing. However, I could see how you could get, like, the years go by so fast. I used to say like one week could be someone else's year when you're on tour at a high velocity, at a high volume. It's just so intense, and there's so many experiences every moment. Um, then after that, I was like, you know what? Touring is not the thing. And I had no idea that you could start an agency and sell sponsorships and get brands to be clients and do festivals. I kind of thought like you could do that, but I didn't really know that could happen. And so when it happened, I was like, this is great. And having it happen with good people is even better.
Yeah, definitely. We have another one. This is from London. At what point in your career did you stop being seen as helpful and start being trusted with major responsibilities? Or at least at what point in your career did you feel that way?
Yeah. I have a good one. If I don't want to keep talking, but I have a good one. So
Yeah,
we were
no, go
doing
ahead.
the police reunion tour. There's actually a thing right here, and at this point, I was already like pretty seasoned on the road, but this really hit me like, oh, there's a lot of responsibility. We basically were doing meet and greets the entire tour all over for the police, the band, and certain VIP members and Best Buy. So we were setting up this like Casbah in every stadium, every arena that we went to. And before the project launched, the main guy that was at Best Buy, my partner Andy and I were driving him back to his hotel. We just had this big meeting, and he gets out of the car, and then he gets back in the car and looks at us. He says, "Guys, this is a real big deal, so don't F it up." And he said the real word. He didn't say the F word. I typically like to swear, but the impact of that, I was like, holy shit, we really got to do a good job. And that's when I knew there was a lot of responsibility.
Awesome. John or Kira, do you have stories like that?
I think for me, what it just with a lot of probably you hear a lot of similar stories, but the industry has been on such a boom for the last so many years that um, you're just in the room with them having important conversations, and all of a sudden they're like, well, who else is going to do it? Like, all right, you new guy, you were okay, you were helpful for this number, you're now kind of in charge of this. So be prepared to be thrown into positions that you weren't necessarily planning on, and go with it. If people think you got the chops, they'll lean into you. They're not going to throw you out to the wolves if they don't think you're able to do it. So trust those uncomfortable moments where you are kind of pushed into management or into a leader type role, and yeah, trust you got the chops.
I think, yeah, for me, early on, it was definitely in like what skills you have. So I was good at Excel and tracking budgets and paying attention to little details. And it was like, oh, you can build out a 50 tab page Excel that all talks to this one sheet to track labor for this gig across the next 2 months. So you got this, and figured it out along the way. So I think, kind of once you start to realize what skills you already possess that you can apply to this industry, you kind of automatically start taking on a little bit more responsibility. I mean, but from a production manager standpoint, I'm pretty sure it was like, okay, there's three of us and we now have 32 festivals. Kira, you're gonna go do that one now. It's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go production manage that festival now. So
Amazing. I think we have time for about one more question. So this one is from Krishta. If you could change one thing about how this industry operates, what would it be?
Oh, I got this one. For me, hands down. Can you all festival people pick different weekends for the festivals? I do as many as 9 festivals in one weekend, and then the next weekend I'll have zero. We have limited resources in crew, and it really Chicago can only handle so many festivals on the same week, but apparently
Right.
not. I don't know.
John,
That
I'll
for
I'll
me,
file
that's a
our
big one.
complaint together.
Oh,
It's
thank you. I love Grants Park, but really, 5 weeks on site there. Come on.
I would love, I've always said this, both for experiential and festivals, the backbone is the people and the independent contractors. And I would love to see generally more recognition for those groups because that truly is the backbone of what makes everything work. On the activation side, there's so many amazing producers that are independent contractors that never get recognition or any sort of, acknowledgement. And same thing on the festival side. Like most festivals are owned by a few people that then subcontract 90% of the work out to different vendors and partners. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just think when something goes well, that should be celebrated across the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can go ahead and take Phoebe's question. I think we have time for her last question, and then we'll take things out.
All right, awesome. So we have one last question. This is from Phoebe. What are some traits of great leaders and coworkers when working on a team?
Shit, I could talk for hours about this, but I'll let someone else go.
No, Joe, please.
All right. So I think we said it before, like having multiple experiences is truly, I think, it's such a big positive. Um, Empathy is extremely important, and being a good person is extremely important, and having initiative is extremely important. Those combinations, no matter what type of industry that, again, speaking to all the industries that we touch, those types of people, those business leaders that I've been in meetings with, those types of people tend to be the best of the best. And you could also tell by how long their employees or their vendor partners stick around. So that those make great leaders. I did a post a while ago about tour managers making the best executives, and I think anyone that works on the road or production, Kira, to your point about having such fastidious records and Excel spreadsheets and all that, that is truly a skill. But having that skill at volume and at such stressful situations and be able to pull through is truly incredible.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for that answer. John or Kira, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I did, and I feel like I totally just lost my train of thought here.
It's totally okay.
I'm surprised nobody asked where catering was. I was waiting for that question. Like,
That's a whole thing in itself, right?
It's important.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask where craft was, but I don't know if we have time for all that. But I'm going to pass this off to Xavier, who's going to close us out. He's also a member of the Junior Advisory Board. Once again, thank you guys so much for being here with us. Xavier, take it away.
Thank you, Belle. And once again, thank you, Kiara McCabe, Joe Lucchese, and John Wagner for sharing your time and experience with us today. It was extremely insightful. And thank you for everyone who joined. This is the first webinar from the MMC Junior Advisory Board, and we're already planning our next one for the fall. So stay tuned for so much more. The Music Media Collective is also hosting a virtual panel discussion during New York Music Month in June. So that's a couple of weeks away. And the MMC also produces a live music talk podcast 2 times a month called Asses and Seats. During this podcast, we discuss music news, conduct live interviews with artists and industry professionals, and also raise money for our charitable partner, the National Independent Venue Foundation. As well as you can follow us on Music Media Collective on our social for updates and learn more about our mission and programming. Visit mmcollective.org. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.